Gibson Goldtone came in. Repair ticket just says Goldtone issues, which is actually pretty helpful because they all have very common issues. This one, like many amps where the chassis is mounted in the bottom of the cabinet, came in just covered in dirt, a thick layer of dirt and pet hair. And I took it outside and hit it with a dry brush and then a paper towel. And believe it or not, this is after the worst of it's out. Also got quite a few live spiders out. And all this dust and dirt and pet hair that's on here, it's going to get down into the holes and into the tube sockets. So we'll clean all that up a little bit. Let me just show you a preview of how this chassis will clean up. So before it goes back to the owner, it'll overall be looking a lot better. Anyway, let's look on the inside. I hope for the owner's sake that none of these caps need to be replaced because they're all covered in huge amounts of what looks to be E3000, which is often difficult to get off. Sometimes heat helps. Oops. There's also little bits of hot glue here and there. That's not as problematic. Let me get that one out, that blob out. Anyway, we will see. None of the big caps are visibly bulging, so caps may be okay. There's not too much nasty in here. Though, where's that power resistor I saw? It's a funky, powdery covering on that one there that really should not be there. I'm going to clean that real quick and take a look at it. Alright, cleaned it with some isopropyl and measures 123 ohms. Let that evaporate a bit. And then we'll power this up. The fuses, all the internal fuses seem to be fine. Imagine the pots are dirty based on the filth inside the amp. I'm sure the jacks are too. But let's see what it sounds like. I'm sure the tubes are probably shot. This is the sound it makes. That's the sound it makes coming out of standby with the volume at 0. That's probably bad tubes in the preamp. Let's see if the Pento triode has anything to do with it. No! Well, let's get these preamp tubes out. See if that noise goes away. If so, it may just be a tube / a whole bunch of dirt. Sorry about the clutter in the background. Well, that's promising. All the noise is gone now. So, all right, I'm going to turn this off. And we're going to clean this part of the chassis a bit. And we're going to clean the hell of those tube sockets. And we're going to try some different tubes in there. Okay, well, all the tube sockets have been cleaned, and all new tubes in the amp. Well, not all new, but test tubes that I know are good. So the tubes that came with are not in it right now. And that static noise is still there. And I'm just going to go through and measure things first because it's annoying to... Normally I'd check voltages, but that static sound is really aggravating. So 168K. That's a 1 watt red, yellow. I would expect that to be 220K. This one should be 100K. Black, yellow, and I can't make out what the other band is. It's measuring 51K. Let's see, on this plate, again, it should be 100K. Measuring 62K. I've got an odd thing here where none of the plate resistors in circuit with the amp off are measuring the values that they should. The 220K is measuring about 160K. The 100Ks are measuring about 50K. And the amp is drawing too much current. Not enough that it's going to blow a fuse, but I can see that it's drawing much more current than it should. And I'm wondering what's up with that. I'm going to lift this resistor. This is a Vichy 1 watt metal oxide, but it's not rated for a huge amount of voltage across it. And I'm wondering if there was a power surge or something that might have taken out a whole bunch of these resistors at once. Might have caused some damage, just some condition that the amp was never designed for. Either that or something's messing up. Now it measures 100K when it's in circuit. But if I measure from this point to the B plus here, getting 80K away. All right. And the only thing that's in common with them from this point to this point is this capacitor. If this little ceramic disc cap is leaking, and it's supposed to be just a shunt, just to take some treble out of that plate. Let me lift this cap and see if that's where the issue is. If this cap has gone bad, that could explain a few things. I'm not too concerned about saving the cap in the process. Caps are easy to add in. It's just parallel across that resistor. It's that resistor I'm more concerned with. So we're going to lose that cap in the process. It was a cheap one to begin with. I'll take a measurement. I'll get the readings off. It's just a 100 picofarad, looks like. Wait, 102. Sorry, it's a 1 nanofarad. I've got those, so that's not a problem. With any amp like this, I'm trying to do as much good as possible without pulling the board, without doing a big deal repair, because the amp intrinsically just does not have a huge resale value. Now it measures 2 meg away. That's a much more realistic reading. So I'll put this resistor back. Like I said, this isn't the prettiest stuff to watch. This isn't my ideal kind of repair. But if it solves the problem for very little time, then I'll be thrilled. So now it's climbing up in value. It was stopping at about 160K. Now it's 177. All right, the one that was measuring 50K is now measuring 87K. And same for here. Yeah, it's climbing up. So that is at least part of the problem. That was a bad cap. I'm going to clean up this area of the board. There might be some other problem area. Let's see where the camera's looking. Yeah, you can see that. There's one here that's doing the same thing. And that cap is a 47 picofarad across another plate resistor. And if that cap is failing in exactly the same way, that will throw everything off just the way the other one was. So we're better, but not all the way there. I actually was able to pull that one without damaging it. So if it's not the problem, I can put it back. What are our plates measuring now that that's out of circuit? A slow climb up. Why is it a slow climb? The ones that were measuring 50 are now measuring 70 to 92, so that one's almost up. What my thought process is go on with, I have a reduced resistance from the B plus node to each plate. And each plate goes through the triode itself to grid resistance and cathode resistance to ground. So there's a path to ground from this side of each plate resistor, and there's a path to ground through the capacitor on this side of the plate resistor. And that capacitor should be almost infinite to ground if the cap's healthy. Let me pull V1. Though I know V1 is a good tube. Let's see what that resistance is now. That took away the plate to cathode path. So this plate here has no path to ground on this side, except, well, this one does to the tone stack, this one does not. So let me measure this one. 225. 100K. 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 I don't regret changing this. It's a better quality resistor for this, but well, good Lord, I just saw the problem. I think they've got a 100 picofarad cap from plate to cathode on this tube right here, and that cap probably has the same leak that that cap had. That resistor was changed out as troubleshooting to see if the old 1 watts were failing. They're not. With the V1 pulled, all these preamp tubes measure correctly. As soon as V1 is present, that goes away because you have internal resistance of the tube, and then you have this cap across that. I think that cap is failing. And the easiest way to do that is it's just 100 picofarad. I can see the traces from plate to cathode. If I'm wrong, I put a new 100 picofarad right at the socket itself. Get this out, put the tube back in, and see what the measurements are. All right, with the tube back in place and that cap out, and what do these resistors measure now? 224, 98. This one still says 84, but this is on a different preamp node than these two. So this problem has been fixed, but this one should say 100, says 84. This one should say 100, and it says 100. So there's a remaining problem. All right, got a lot of the nasties out, all the crackles gone. That was those 3 bad ceramic disc caps that were basically just taking away decoupling between stages. Once those caps failed, bad things happened. That's all gone. There's a little bit of a noise down at the very bottom range of the volume pot. Just need to clean that. The amp is sounding okay. But this amp has the problem that all Gibson Goldtones do, in that they were copying Vox values without knowing what they're doing. So they have the Vox value of 100 ohm screen grid resistors on the L84s, and they have the Vox value of 120 ohms for the cathode resistor in the output. But they don't have the Vox power transformer, and they don't have the Vox voltages. So with the voltages in this amp, even though they're using those values that Vox used, they get very different results than Vox did. So right now, this amp is idling at 17.67 watts with a tube that cannot handle more than 14 watts on it. Notorious for eating EL84s, these Goldtones are. It's got 120 ohm cathode, which is the Vox value. It's got 12 volts on that cathode, and it's got 372 volts DC from plate to cathode. Now, an AC15, which is the circuit they would have been copying, would have about 310 volts total on the plate. So about 300 volts from plate to cathode, as opposed to 372. And one of the problems with fixing the Gibson Trace Elliott bad copy of an AC15 circuit here, and to be fair, many people who copy Vox badly have made the same mistakes, is that if I cool the bias by changing that 120 ohm resistor, where's my little pointer thing? If I change out this 120 ohm resistor right here in the bias, it will cool the bias, at which point the plate voltage will go up even more. And EL84s have a limitation on their plate voltage, which realistically should be 350 volts. They are already exceeding that plate voltage quite a bit. They have 372 volts from plate to cathode, and that cathode is another 12 volts above ground. So they are exceeding the ratings of the tube maximum voltage by a lot. 372 plus 12, so 384. That's 34 volts higher than the maximum rated. If I cool it so that this thing idles at 12 to 14 watts, you're going to have even higher plate voltage. So I think the solution is for me to replace these EL34s with 7189s, which is a military grade 84 that can handle the higher plate voltages, and then cool the bias down to about 14 watts and increase the screen grid resistors from 100 ohms to 1K. Now, all this can be done topside, but I need to call the owner first and explain that from day one, this circuit has been out to get EL84s, and that they will not last in this, and they will not sound very good in this, because this was not designed. This was a copy-paste job and introduced tons of problems. And people disagree with me. I did a previous video on the Trace Elliott Gibson Goldtone and said much the same thing. People said, you don't know what you're talking about. That's the classic sound, blah, 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 blah. Yeah. I don't know what I'm talking about when I discuss Vox-esque circuits. I certainly don't know how a Vox works, or how cathode bias works, or how voltages work, or how tubes work, or data sheets work, etc., etc. You're right. You're right. You guys on the gear page, you got me busted. I don't know what I'm talking about. I only do this for a living and specialize. If I specialize in anything over the years, it's been in Voxes and, sadly, some of their derivatives. So ignore me if you want to.